أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد الصادق الوعد الأمين اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Inshallah, we will resume the themes from the Quran program every Wednesday. We are still doing it remotely, but inshallah we'll continue with the surahs. Today's surah is chapter 58, Al-Mujadilah, the Pleading Woman. Now this surah starts the 28th part of the Quran, and that juz 28, all of the surahs have similar themes. They all revolve about the sense of belonging to the Muslim collective, to the Ummah. Now, it is not enough to believe in Allah, read the Quran, and perform acts of worship. A believer must feel that they belong to the Muslim nation, to the Muslim group, and act as an effective member, giving aid and support to the community of believers, and dissolving all relations with the enemies of the faith, regardless who they are. Now, unity among believers is an essential ingredient that strengthens the sense of belonging to the faith. So the surah teaches with practical examples how to develop a cohesive society built on faith with the family at its center. So this particular surah focuses on a family that's about to break up. So the family unit is at the center of the surah because family cohesion results in a strong society. When the family breaks up, so does the society. And we see that, in the US, all around us, we see all the looting and all the bad behavior is all because the family unit have broken up and has been for years. So if we look at the verses of the surah Al-Mujadilah, it starts with a woman. Her name was Khawla bint Thalaba. She went to the Prophet and she was complaining to him about her husband shunning her as a wife. Before Islam, they had a bad practice that when a husband is no longer interested in his wife, they say, "You're like my mother," and meaning that he has no physical interest in her, nor will he give her due rights. And the Prophet listened to her complaint, but he did not know how to answer. But Jibreel alayhi salam came down with these verses concerning her issue. And the surah puts an end to this harmful practice that leads to destroying the family unit and the society. So verse 1 in chapter 58, Allah says, قَدْ سَمِعَ اللَّهُ قَوْلَ الَّتِي تُجَادِلُكَ فِي زَوْجِهَا وَتَشْتَكِي إِلَى اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ يَسْمَعُ تَحَوْرَكُمَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ بَصِيرٌ. Certainly has Allah heard the speech of the one who argues with you, O Muhammad, concerning her husband, and directs her complaint to Allah, and Allah hears your dialogue. Indeed, Allah is hearing and seeing. Now, the mother is the one who gave birth. The sister is the blood sibling. The wife is the wife, and so on. Social roles cannot be switched. This type of misclassification does not please Allah. When you go and say, "Oh, this so-and-so is like my sister." No, she is not your sister. She is a foreign woman that you're not supposed to be alone with. I mean, these types of misclassifications are very dangerous. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala does not like it. And for this particular act where the wife is misclassified as, you're like a mother. No, a mother is the one who gave birth to you. You only have one mother. The wife is the one that you have this social bond with, the bond of marriage. So this behavior is a sin of playing around with these terms. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala set the expiation for it to dissuade others from doing it. If you ever do it, well, here's how you atone for it. One is you have to free a slave before you can resume marital relations. But if you cannot find a slave, like in today's day, there are no slaves to be freed, then you have to fast 2 consecutive months. If you physically cannot fast 2 consecutive months, not continuously, but like from sunrise to sunset, but for 60 days. Then the last one is feeding 60 poor people, from an average meal. So these are tough rules that are put in place to protect the sacred marriage contract. And Allah Ta'ala revealed these verses to put a stop once and for all for this harmful societal practice that threatened the family unit. Now, as we go through the verses, other behavior that are detrimental to the society are mentioned. And one of them is private conversations. So a private conversation is, say you have a group of 3 people. If you have a group of 3 people, you cannot have 2 people kind of step aside and have a secret conversation and exclude the third person from it. This is not allowed in Islam. Because that does not harbor, the love and affection, but it actually harbors animosity and suspicion, and it's like, why are you excluding me? Now, if they were 4 and the person has somebody else to talk to, that's okay. But you cannot exclude a person, no matter what you're discussing. So, this behavior instills suspicion and hatred in the excluded one, and is forbidden in Islam, even if the conversation was about religion and was, innocent. Because social cohesion is more important than any topic that is discussed. And at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Jews of Medina hated the Prophet and the believers, and they resorted to this private conversation to instill fear and anxiety in the believers. So when the believers passed by them, they would kind of, whisper to themselves, and the believer is thinking, are they thinking that they're going to hurt me or something? That type of behavior cannot be tolerated in a society. And they would also play on words, just like in the first verse where the mother and the wife roles were switched. Here also they're playing on words, and you think that they're telling you good morning, but they're actually insulting you or threatening you. They're playing on words. And, believers think it's good speech, but they mean something bad with it. So this behavior of playing with words and, cannot be tolerated in a cohesive society, and Allah Ta'ala forbade it. In verse 9, Allah says, addressing the believers, that when you have a private conversation, do not converse about sin and aggression and disobedience to the messenger, but converse about righteousness and piety, and fear Allah, to whom you will be gathered. And like I said, if you had a group of 3 people, 2 of them are not allowed to have a secret conversation, and exclude the third person. Another good practice is mentioned in verse 11 that would strengthen the society, is when it has to do with religious gatherings. Religious gatherings like Friday prayers or congregation prayers, or when there are lessons, lessons given and people kind of gather to hear lessons. So this is more for religious gatherings. Allah says, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قيل لكم تفسحوا في المجالس فافسحوا يفسح الله لكم وإذا قيل انشزوا فانشزوا يرفع الله الذين آمنوا منكم والذين أوتوا العلم درجات والله بما تعملون خبير. In verse 11, Allah says, so when, all you who believe, when you are told, make room, so if you're going into a very crowded place and somebody tells you, make room for your brothers, then move and make room. Don't sit and take the space of 4 or 5 people. That does not enhance the unity of the society. So when, making room in a religious gathering strengthens the community by showing others that you care, out of a respect for their age or their knowledge, or, so it just shows them that you care, that you're willing to squeeze yourself and be a little bit uncomfortable in order to make room for them, so they don't stay standing or, be excluded from that gathering. And it's not allowed for any person to remove another one so they can sit in front of them. Whether they're young or old, if they are there, they have every right to be there, and nobody has any right to remove them and sit, sit in their place. So, and then when the gathering is done, you're supposed to leave. Do not linger around. The companions at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to love the company of the Prophet, that when the lesson is done, they would hate to leave. They would just stay there. And when the gathering is done, you're supposed to leave out of respect for other people's time, so it's a good practice that when it says, okay, we're done, then disperse. So Allah loves such good behavior of making room for, when there's a gathering, and then dispersing when the lesson is done. Allah loves such good behavior and will reward for it in ways we cannot imagine. So the status of the person is not in the location they're sitting in, not in the first row, not in, where they sit, but it comes from their piety, their knowledge, and their good deeds. And that's what, Allah is saying, that He will raise those who have believed among you and those who were given knowledge by degrees. So if you want to be elevated, it's not showing up and being in the first line and taking the space of 3 or 4 people. It's how much piety you have, how much knowledge you have, and how much good deeds that you put, that knowledge and that piety into action. Another topic is discussed in the surah about a threat to the unity of the nation, which is hypocrites. And hypocrites, they pose a great danger to the society and the unity. And because they have no allegiance to any group but to themselves. They, if it serves their purposes to ally with one group, they will do that. But at the same time, if their interests, happen on the other side, they will switch allegiances without even blinking. So that type of behavior is not accepted, in a cohesive society. And the hypocrites at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they allied themselves with the Jews in Medina and the pagans of Quraysh to destroy the Muslims. I mean, they were plotting actively to destroy the Muslims, all the while they're pretending to be part of the society and pretending to be Muslims and pious, and they would show up to the mosque and they would pray, but they had no allegiance to the believers and no love for the religion. They just wanted what was good for themselves. They pretended to be among the believers to achieve worldly gains and never considered themselves as part of the fabric of the society. And Allah says in verse 16, اتخذوا أيمانهم جنة فصدوا عن سبيل الله فلهم عذاب مهين. They took their false oath to be believers as a cover, so they averted people from the way of Allah, and for them is a humiliating punishment. So the ones who work to destroy a society like that are from the party of Satan. They're from the devil's party, and they will surely lose in this life and in the next. So in this world, there are 2 parties. There's the party of Satan that the verses describe, and the behaviors that are detrimental to a society. These people are the ones who seed hatred and destruction and mischief in a society. And there's the other group, which is the party of Allah. And the verses basically are presenting to us these 2 images and asking us, which group do you want to be in? Do you want to be among the hypocrites, or do you want to be among the believers or the party of God? You can claim whatever you want, but do your actions confirm your claim? In verse 20, Allah says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُحَادُّونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ أُولَٰئِكَ فِي الْأَذَلِّينَ. Indeed, the ones who oppose Allah and His Messenger, those will be among the most humbled on the day of judgment, with humiliation and with punishment. كتب الله لأغلبن أنا ورسلي إن الله قوي عزيز. In verse 21, Allah has written, I will surely overcome, I and my messengers. That means Allah and His messengers and the believers will have the upper hand. Indeed, Allah is powerful and exalted in might. So the winning party is God's party. The ones not who claim to be a part of the party of Allah, because we have other groups who do that and they do nothing to actually be part of that group. The party of God are the ones who follow God's commands, and their allegiance is to Allah, His Prophet, and to the believers. Now the chapter ends with a very beautiful verse that is very tough and lays out the social priorities, that loyalty, love, and affection in a society should be to Allah and to the believers, and never be given to open enemies of Islam, even if they were family or community. And in verse 22, Allah says, "You will not find a people who believe in Allah." That means, the verse is saying that believer will not act this way. You will not find a people who believe in Allah and the last day having affection for those who oppose Allah and His Messenger, even if they were their fathers or their sons or their brothers or their kindred. Family, tribe, nation, it does not matter. Your loyalty is to Allah, to His commands, and to the believers, and never to the enemies of Islam. Those who give their allegiance to Allah and to the believers, He has decreed within their hearts faith. That's a proof that you believe in Allah and you have faith, and supported them with spirit from Him. And we will admit them to gardens beneath which rivers flow, wherein they abide eternally. Allah is pleased with them, and they are pleased with Him. He is pleased with their behavior, and they are pleased with Allah's bounties and His reward. Those are the party of Allah. Unquestionably, the party of Allah, they are the successful. So no group can claim to be party of Allah without exhibiting these qualities that are mentioned in verse 22. So allegiance to the faith and to the believers comes ahead of blood relations or any other affiliation. The surah asks very important questions. Who do you love and consider your close friends? Who do you reserve your affection for? Who do you consider to be your enemy, and who do you consider to be your friend? Now, just to be clear, a believer treats everyone with justice and with respect. So this is, the verse does not say that you only treat believers, well, and everybody, even, non-believers, you treat them, with harm and malice. No, you treat everyone with justice and with respect. But affection, intimate relations, and a sense of belonging, your close inner circle, that should be exclusive to fellow believers and not to open enemies of Islam, regardless who they are. If your father is open, even if your own father is openly hostile to believers, and then that's not part of, you treat them with respect because they're your father, but you stay away from them. You don't give them that love and affection and allegiance, because they are not part of the fabric of the society. For such believers, the party of Allah, they will have Allah's support and His pleasure in this life and in the next. Now, the last thing I want to mention is the name of the surah, Al-Mujadilah, the pleading woman. So it comes from the mention in the first verse. And Allah Ta'ala legislated the rules to protect the family at the most intimate level, to strengthen the bonds of the society. A strong, cohesive family will raise good children who will benefit the society. Children are the first victims of any familial disruption and will reflect negatively on the society. And we see that a lot of the criminals, a lot of the looters, the people that are not good members of the society, if you go back and look in their background, they either have a missing parent in their, a single parent raised them, or parents didn't care for them. They just kind of, trusted them to the schools to raise them. There's something wrong with the family unit, because a tight, good, God-fearing family unit will only promote good children and good society members. So one must fear Allah and put the effort to resolve issues to create a unified family so the society and the ummah can be strong and unified. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.